Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria Q. Kane.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. We have a great show for you today. We are back from our dreaded cruise, so we are going to get into all of the details of our trip. We're going to get into some freak accidents that involve injuries and death related to summertime activities. A man who accidentally swallowed a toothbrush 52 years ago and recently started having problems. True crime taking place at the happiest place on earth. A new Netflix documentary talking about an unsolved case involving a woman who disappeared on a cruise. So that's very relevant to what we just went through. A guy who received an organ transplant and got more than just a new kidney. And the morbid reason why one town is being told to boil their water. All that and more on today's episode. Let's get started talking about our experience the first time we ever took a cruise.
Oh my God. I'm not going to lie. When we pulled up to the boat, I was real stressed out when I saw it. And it didn't help that the parking was such a shit show because it just had everybody's blood pressure raised.
Yeah, the first couple of minutes of it, I guess, just approaching. I don't know. When we pulled up, I was like, "Oh, this is kind of cool," and I was optimistic about it going in. I was a little upset about the parking situation because it was as Maria said, it was kind of a shit show. It was to the point where I planned for us to be there an hour early, and thank God I did, because if we just would have went according to the time it said to drive there, we would have missed the boat just because of the parking situation. So, but other than that, it was pretty. I thought it was pretty cool how easy it was to really get on and off of the boat. It was really nice leaving yesterday. Just we were allowed to leave the boat at 7:45, and I was home by a little after 9:00. So that was awesome. It was just very quick on and off for the most part.
I mean, day one, let me rewind a little bit because like my morning started off with the night before I was up until almost midnight editing the Karen Reed episode because it was so long. It was so long, like taking me forever to edit it. And so I'm really tired, and then in the morning, my neighbor just casually tells me and my husband how the guy died in my house, which I don't really want to get into on here.
No, you have to, you can't do that. I don't let you. She does this all the time with the kids. She'll say something and give like this teaser and not give them the full story. Like, now you have to tell everybody how your neighbor died in your house. This whole entire show is about death, so you need to tell them exactly what happened.
All right, so we bought the house off of the people that built it like a long time ago. So it was only owned by one family before. And we were having a yard sale a couple years ago, and a neighbor said she used to be friends with one of the kids. They had 4 children, the people that lived here. So, and they're now in their like 50s and 60s. So at the yard sale, this woman said she was friends with one of the sons, but he died and they don't talk about it. So we knew one of them had died when they were younger. So all this time we didn't know how. I tried looking it up. Nothing came up, whatever. So my neighbors across the street have also lived here since like the neighborhood was built in the 60s. So my husband's always talking to the guy. And then it came up that they had 4 kids living in the house. And my neighbor just casually goes, "Yeah, well, one of them died because he hung himself in the attic doing some sex stuff." And I'm like, all right, this is how my Saturday vacation started.
Which is also really interesting because another one of the children had been caught up in a huge sex, like a child pornography sting in our area. So,
yes.
So like, I don't know what the hell was going on in that house, and I hope you don't find any weird shit in the walls or anything, but
I'm like, why are both the sons in this family such sex pests? Like, what was going on in this family I don't know what was going on.
I just think it's bizarre because your attic isn't somewhere because when you say that somebody killed themselves hung themselves doing weird sex stuff, to me that's autoerotic asphyxiation.
That's what
And
I'm thinking
and
too.
that's not suicide, that's an accidental death. So for me it's like, that's for those of you who don't know, that's uh when a man is having sex or with himself, or you could do it with other people too, but in this case this guy had put something around his neck to cut off his oxygen supply to his brain while he was having an orgasm, because it's supposed to be like the best orgasm ever. And people do it they do it to experience this orgasm. They don't do it to kill themselves. So, but when you're cutting off your carotid arteries, there's a chance that you can accidentally kill yourself. So that's what happened. So that's why it's interesting to me that someone would do that in your attic, because I don't think, when I look at your house, that's not like a place that I would want to hang out. It's not, I mean, if he was really killing himself, then you
Yeah,
would say,
but
okay, he did that, but
I don't know. My house is very small. I can't fathom having one child in this house,
yeah,
let alone
it is
four.
very small house for 4 children for sure. But
So,
that's what people used to do back in the day. Like kids used to share bedrooms, and
no, I know, but what I'm saying is like I could see him going up there
yeah,
because
it could have been
nobody's.
like a hangout zone or whatever, but it is just weird that two of their kids were doing this naughty stuff. But
So this is how my Saturday start. I'm like packing the car, waiting for Dee Dee to show up because we were driving together, and this information comes to light truly 2 minutes before she pulls up to my house. So I'm like, okay, this is how vacation's starting. Now you have a 2-hour car ride to Bayonne. Then you get there, and the traffic is such a shit show. I mean, our ship fit like what 5,000 people. I'm like, they get 45,000 people in and out of Citizens Bank Park almost every day, and they can't figure out the cruise parking. It was
yeah,
ridiculous.
it was ridiculous. But overall, we don't need to go over every single detail of the of the cruise, but what did you think of it overall? Do you think, would you
What?
go back on one?
No, I mean, I when I was on it, I was able to dissociate. I thought I was gonna be really scared of being. I don't like boats at all. I thought I was gonna be really scared of the open waters. Um, and once it started moving, I was also terrified of getting seasickness. So once we started moving, I wasn't. I was actively trying not to look out the window because I was scared I was gonna get seasick. And I'm like, what am I gonna do for the next 5 days if I'm seasick? So once it started going and we were with everybody, I was totally comfortable. Um, and I liked. We got to Bermuda a couple days later. I thought Bermuda was awesome and beautiful. The beach there was really cool. Everything there was really cool. I thought the cruise was fine. Like I had a really good time with our family, but I don't think I would cruise ever again because I just think it's a giant scam.
That was a turnoff to me, was all of the unknown charges, and the sliminess of it was just a turnoff, but that's, I guess that's to be expected in a situation like that. I really liked I really, really liked the boat part of it, and the sunsets and the water, and we had a balcony and we left the door open all night when we were sleeping, and you could hear the water, and it was just so still and awesome at night, and pitch dark, and all of that was really, really cool. So I liked that whole part of it, but it was too like people-y for me. Way too many people, and just the gross, like, if it didn't have a casino, if it didn't have people smoking in the only part of the shade next to the pool, if it's, like, there's certain things, then I would be like, okay, a little bit more open-minded to doing it. And I didn't really like the food situation. It's weird for me to say that because they said it was like all you can eat food and
Well, I think for us it
drink.
I think for us it sucked because of the gluten problem because before I had the gluten intolerance, I would eat chicken fingers and all that stuff and be totally fine with eating stuff like that. But when you're like us and you have this restriction, they really did not have a lot of gluten-free options and it was hard to eat anything and the things we could eat were not particularly great. So, I was
It
having
just
a hard time with that.
I just think that what I didn't like about it was, for example, we travel a lot, and when we go to a hotel, we'll always stop at like a convenience store and just get some snacks and bring back the food to the hotel and eat in the room, and because we'll like watch Shark Tankathon or something like that at start at 9 o'clock or whatever. And it was just like really, it was hard to bring food back to your room. There was no refrigerator in the room. There was a cooler, which is not a refrigerator.
Oh.
If you wanted a drink, you had to go to a restaurant to get it. Like, I just would have liked vending machines. I don't know, whatever. But overall, I don't know. A part of me is like it was better. The parts of it that I was thinking were going to be good ended up being way better than I thought it was going to be. And I like that you could walk around the ship and they kind of let you go wherever you wanted to go, which we'll get into later with one of our stories that might explain what happened to that woman that went missing. But I like that we went to different areas of the boats multiple times and there was no people around. So it was easy to kind of get privacy, considering that there were that many people on the boat. So I'd be open to going on one again if it wasn't that one.
Well,
There has to be different ones that, because to me it was like, I've always said this. I've hated my whole entire life a party atmosphere and loud music and drinking and cigarette smoke and that whole party atmosphere. I hate it. There has to be other people like
it's
me.
not the place for you. It is not.
But
You don't
there
drink.
has to be lots of people like me that aren't into that as well. It can't be every single cruise is like that.
Yeah, but that's like the point of going on a cruise because it's like a party on the ocean. You're not a party person. So it like my
But there's-
husband thrived on the boat.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
everything
It
he
was
liked.
it was Ricky's dream come true, and Maria was just like, "Yeah, this is it. So enjoy it because we're never coming back."
Also, not to brag, but I won bingo one day, and they were trying. They were like trying to keep the money. So this was what the last day, because technically the last day we got off the boat at 7:30 in the morning. So the day before I won bingo, and then at the casino when you win, you get the money right there. And then with the bingo, they were like, you can come to the desk after midnight and collect it, or we'll roll it over in your account. And I'm like, no, this is not going towards another cruise. Like, I'm getting the cash. And it was like this whole thing. It was so ridiculous. Things like that I really did not appreciate. I thought overall it was a nice time. We had a really good time with family. I didn't get seasick except the one night in the middle of the night I woke up because in the rooms you could really feel the boat moving. And now that we're off the boat, my balance is totally off. Like I keep getting dizzy, which is
Lucia
weird.
said that yesterday too. She's like, "Is it weird that I feel like I'm still moving?" And I was like, "No, I was like, when you go on a treadmill and you get off of it, you like still feel it's probably."
I will say for our whole family though that has no problem all discussing our poop problems. The motion was good for the bowels. Everybody didn't have poop
No one had
problems the entire
problems.
time. Yeah, but even I was also worried, because they say like cruise ships, a lot of people get sick. I mean, definitely the last day of bingo, everybody was coughing, and I was like, this is just great. But I
No,
thought
it
overall it
was-
was fine.
Yeah, it was fine. There were no issues with at least that we know of people getting sick or any kind of mechanical issues. So it was, yeah. I mean, I thought it was good for the most part.
So last night when we got home, I did watch the poop cruise finally because we had talked about it almost a week ago, or I guess a week ago we recorded that episode, so we hadn't seen it yet. And it was actually so much worse than I feel like we talked about in the story. Everybody was saying at like 5 o'clock in the morning they were asleep and the alarm started going off. So a lot of people are hungover and confused, and they were full blown in the middle of the Gulf at that point. And then it just took days, and the poop didn't start actually coming into the hallways and going down the walls until the tugboats got there and started towing them, because I guess from the motion from the tow, that's when the
Oh.
ship started going side to side.
Oh my
But it was
God.
such a nightmare. But yeah, I think everybody should watch. I mean, I was like so scared watching it because we had just been on it, and so I had the exact experience, and that would have been a nightmare.
Okay, so let's get started. Since we've been talking about cruises and everything, we're going to get started talking about some other injuries and deaths that could happen, especially in the summertime because of the warmer weather. Back in 2022, I made a post in the Gross Room that was titled Assault with a Deadly Weapon. And I started off the post by saying to the Gross Room members, if I said to you guys what is considered a deadly weapon, you would probably say a gun or a knife. But I said, what if I told you something silly like umbrellas? hurt, they injure or kill people. 3,000 injuries or deaths a year caused by beach umbrellas.
That's insanely high.
It is insanely high. And luckily, there's not that many deaths. Most of them are just injuries. But there was a case that the reason that I made this post was back in 2022. There was a 63-year-old woman in South Carolina who died because a beach umbrella impaled through her chest. And when I was looking into it, I was shocked too to see how many injuries were caused by them. But you're essentially have a weapon that is a steel or a metal rod that either has a point at the end of it or a corkscrew attached to a parachute. So you're making essentially a harpoon if a big gust of wind comes through and grabs the umbrella, and it acts like a spear and it goes right through a person. It impales them. And it killed this woman. It went through her freaking heart back in 2022, and now we hear of a case that happened this week.
Well, at least this one wasn't as bad as that. So in Asbury Park on Wednesday, this young lifeguard who's only 19 or 20 years old, she was setting up the umbrella at her station. And according to the witnesses, she was on the top step of the bench. And as she was holding the umbrella, like you were saying, a giant gust of wind comes through, knocks her off balance, and brings the umbrella down with her, which impaled her through her armpit.
It's so scary because your armpit has a major artery that comes off of your aorta that's called the axillary artery, and it's a big, thick artery. If that had either torn or severed that artery, she could have died right there. Because you think about it, if you get an injury on your arm or your leg, the first thing that they would say is to tourniquet your arm, the upper part of your arm or leg. But at your armpit, like, you can't really tourniquet the chest like that as well to compress the blood from coming out. And it's coming right off of the artery. So it's just every single time your heart beats, just more and more blood is going to start pouring out of that wound. And it would be very difficult to get somebody to the hospital quick enough to stop a bleed like that. And she's lucky it only went through her muscle and it missed any major artery.
I mean, in this case, she was conscious the entire time, which how horrific must that have been? Then the other
probably hurt like a bitch, honestly.
Well, yeah. So then my next question is the other lifeguards were helping her until the emergency workers got there. So, like, did they make everybody get out of the ocean? Because who's monitoring the people swimming?
I'm not sure, honestly. And another thing I don't think that I read in the article was I think it's important in situations like that. So if it went through her, it's important to leave it there.
So they did leave it in there.
Okay, so
but they had to cut it down because I mean, think of
they can't transport
the
somebody.
Yeah, of the whole umbrella sticking out of her and her body, you know.
Yeah. Well, I have another case in the gross room too that says just screaming in the rain. That one is about an umbrella impaling someone too. This time it's actually just a normal umbrella you would think about using in the rain. But it's the same theory. There's a lot of sharp metal parts, and that happened to this guy that it went through his neck. Crazy,
Jesus.
right? And the same thing, they just cut off part of it just so they could transport him to the hospital. But the reason, so let's say for instance that in this case that we're talking about, this young woman, it went through her armpit and it had, let's say it did sever or it nicked or it was compressing on her axillary artery. If the lifeguards or the emergency first responders had pulled it out at the scene, they could have dislodged that it was, let's say that the rod was pushing in on the vessel or it was actually plugging up the hole that it created. If they pulled that out, it would have just been, it could have just been a leak of blood coming out. And that's why they tell you to leave it in place until they get to the hospital and they could do imaging to see exactly what is happening inside of the arm to see if any blood vessels, and that's exactly what they did. So they checked and they saw that she didn't have any major blood vessels. There's also concern because you have big nerves there as well. So she could have problems with her arm, but she said it only went through her muscle. I don't even understand how she got that lucky. But what a crazy story, right? And people just don't think about it, but when you go to the beach, there's umbrellas everywhere. It's just something you don't think about.
Well, that's why they're stressing the importance of making sure they're weighed down properly because this could be worse as we see in other stories we've covered.
Yeah, I don't really know how you prevent it, honestly. I mean,
I still think it's like such a freak accident, even if you're doing the right thing, because how many umbrellas like get knocked over or fly out? I feel
well,
like you have to have.
apparently 3,000 of them hurt people every year. That's a lot.
I know, but it is a lot, but in the grand scheme of how many are on the beach all over, is it just in the United States or around the world? Because I feel like in the United States alone, that could be a low statistic for how many beaches there are.
Yeah, it is, but it's still significant. In my opinion, it's significant enough to just take into consideration. And I just think that a lot of people don't think about it.
No. But let's move on to another incident at a beach, this time in Florida. So, this couple was on their honeymoon, and while the husband was standing in ankle deep water, he was struck by lightning.
So this weekend, there were a lot of reports of injuries caused by lightning at a beach. This past week, there was in South Carolina, 20 people were injured at a beach that were struck by lightning. Luckily none of them had any fatal injuries, but this guy was only 29 years old visiting New Smyrna Beach for his honeymoon, and we talk about this sometimes in the grocery room, like when you're from one part of the country or the world and you visit another country, part of the country or the world, and you're not used to certain things that happen there, whether it's the weather or the terrain or the animals that live there. And I'm just wondering, obviously, I know in Colorado they get thunderstorms and lightning, but they don't get it like you do in Florida, I would say.
Well, because it's more like tropical
It's
down
very
there.
tropical. Florida is just you go there, it's so humid, and then there's thunderstorms all the time, sometimes multiple times in a day, and they kind of come through for 10-15 minutes and leave, and then the sun comes back out, and that's a common thing that happens in Florida. And I'm not 100% sure that people really realize how you can get hurt standing in the ocean like that. That's why they always say if you are at the beach or you're at a pool and anytime you hear thunder, you should automatically get out of the water no matter what, even if you think it's far away. Because in this case, the surviving wife was saying that she thought that the storm was miles away from the shore, and they probably heard and even maybe saw the lightning but thought it was far away, and it turns out that it wasn't. And when you're in water, you're just at such a higher risk of having serious injury or death from a lightning strike.
But did you see in the article that two other people at a golf club got struck by lightning too, but it said neither of them were hospitalized? I'd be like, I don't know. I need you to look at everything.
Yeah, I would want to just because it could cause a cardiac arrhythmia, and that it just scares you. That makes your heartbeat abnormal. It's estimated that there's 2,000 deaths a year from lightning strikes, and we do hear about them all the time. But just think about those 20 people that were on the beach this weekend that were treated. They were either treated at the scene or at the hospital, but didn't die or have serious injuries. Like, could you think about telling people that you survive? If someone told you they got struck by lightning, would you even believe them? It's just you'd be like, okay, sure you did,
No, because I mean it's
because it's
kind
so
of
rare.
outrageous and it's rare, but and I think it depends on the person telling you too. But
One cool thing about lightning strikes, probably not cool for the victims or the patients that have experienced a lightning strike, but in pathology, we have something called a Lichtenberg figure. Have you ever seen that when a person, like in the grocery room or something, if I've posted it, when a person gets struck by lightning?
I don't think I've ever seen it.
It's really cool looking. You should look at the post in the grocery room about it. It looks like this fern like pattern on the skin that is it's a superficial burn that appears within an hour after someone gets struck by lightning. But there's people, obviously people who die get them, but there's also people who survive that get them too. It almost looks like, do you ever look at a fossil or something that has an imprint of a fern leaf on it? It just kind of has that look to it. It's just really interesting looking. and they go away. They're not permanent. They go away within a day or two after a person's struck by lightning, but that is definitely a telltale sign that someone truly was struck by lightning.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, obviously, like you said, not cool for the
Yeah,
person
it's just
struck, but
it just looks very it's so striking, and on some people it's very, very obvious, and it's very specific to lightning strikes. Like there's nothing else that causes that. And it's really, really cool.
all right, let's move on to this next story. In China, a 64-year-old man went to the doctor after feeling an odd sensation in his stomach, only for them to find a toothbrush lodged in his intestines that he swallowed 52 years beforehand.
Yeah, so he just starts telling them, and doctors, seriously, GI doctors especially, see the strangest things. But obviously, they're like, okay, so you're having all of these problems. We did an endoscopy. We found a toothbrush in your small intestine that was about 17 centimeter or 7 inches in length. So pretty long.
So long.
So long, right? And how did this get there? And he's like, oh, yeah, when I was 12 years old, I swallowed it and I didn't want to get in trouble and I figured it would dissolve and it just hasn't caused me any problems until today. It's so nuts, right?
How could you even remember something like that so long ago? I mean, all right, let's put it into perspective.
Just
Yesterday,
because you get old doesn't mean you forget, like, your life.
yeah,
I
but
mean, when you're 12, you remember stuff like that.
no, I'm saying like yesterday, something you think you would remember. I texted mom and said, "What was your wedding song 50 years ago?" She said, "I don't know it." I'm like, how do you forget something?
I thought it was Elvis, Are You Lonesome Tonight?
I said, "Do you remember your wedding song?" And she wrote back, "No."
I feel like it was that. I don't know.
Anyway, I'm just saying, like, that was 50 years ago, and she can't even remember something like that on the best day of her life, so to speak.
Well, the guy probably didn't think much about it until they were like, because listen, like, I don't care who you are. At some point, if a toothbrush went into your mouth and you swallowed it, it would trigger a memory. Like, that's not something that happens every day. So the doctor said, hi, was there any time that you ingested this toothbrush? And he's like, oh, yeah, there was this time when I was a kid.
He's really lucky that didn't cause worse problems.
It is. And think about this, like, just thinking about being a 12-year-old boy swallowing a 7-centimeter toothbrush. I mean, or a 7-inch toothbrush. Yeah, like 17-centimeter toothbrush. It's just like, seems like not an easy thing to do, but it could have been something like he was doing a bet with a friend or something.
Well, didn't we see this before where a person swallowed a toothbrush, but it was because they were sticking it down their throat for an eating disorder?
Yeah, a lot of times we get linear objects like that people are using because, especially if they have a history of bulimia and they lose their gag reflex, they use longer objects to try to make themselves throw up. I've gotten lots of different foreign bodies in the lab, pens, butter knives, things that are very long that people do. So yeah, that's definitely a possibility, but I don't think with a 12-year-old boy, it was probably more just horsing around doing a bet or something like that. But obviously when you swallow something that's long like that, even though a toothbrush isn't sharp, so it's not like swallowing a knife, it has blunt, smoother plastic edges, but concerns would be if it didn't stay straight, which especially wouldn't happen as it was going through the curvy GI tract, that it could just go sideways and kind of puncture right through the intestine wall, which would cause a huge problem. So this somehow just got lodged in there in the wall and just made a home there for multiple years until it started causing problems all these years later, which it's just so amazing how the human body works like that, right?
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by The Gross Room.
Guys, we have over 3,400 posts with videos and photos in The Gross Room. We told you about some of the cases that you could look up today, like getting impaled by an umbrella and Lichtenberg figures you would see in lightning strikes. We also just recently had that episode about the Karen Reed trials, so there's a part 1 and part 2 high-profile death dissection in The Gross Room going over that case with a fine-tooth comb, as I like to say. We also have some different stories this week, including ones that have to do with other childhood injuries besides. We also have a case with toothbrush that isn't this particular case, but yeah, a really unusual childhood injury. So check that out this week.
Head over to thegrossroom.com now to sign up.
All right. I don't even know where to start with this next case, Maria. Start talking about it because I still don't really know what's happening.
All right, so over the weekend, this wedding was supposed to take place, I guess, before the park opened in Disneyland Paris. So they said it was booked at the very last minute, and of course, because of that, and it's Disney, it cost a bunch of money. We'll get more into the numbers later. But the guests start piling in for this wedding. So over 300 people before the park opens. And then the wedding is starting to go ahead. And then the staff at Disneyland realizes that the bride is a 9-year-old girl.
What? Why? Like, so this guy was trying to marry a child, or what?
Yeah.
I don't understand, like, what was happening.
So they're seeing this wedding getting set up, and then they see this little girl in a wedding dress, and they said she had these 5-inch heels taped to her. I don't know what that means, but she seemed very scared and confused. So the Disneyland staff ended up calling the police, and then 4 people got arrested in this case. So the main person that got arrested in this case was a 39-year-old man from the UK who was set to be the groom. So we'll talk a little bit about him later. Her mother, and then 2 other people who said they were hired to play the little girl's sister and father. So what we've learned from this is basically all these people were hired as last-minute extras for this stunt they're saying they're trying to do. So the groom who was arrested is trying to say that he hired all these people to do this stunt mock wedding to this child, but it turns out he's this convicted sex offender.
So was he really just what was the mock wedding for? Like, what would be the point of it? Was he trying to make a viral video? Like, what would be the point of it?
All right, so this is what's really weird. So he's saying it's this mock video, but this guy is a convicted pedophile since 2016. And he has this weird history of doing these social media stunts in public to try to recruit children. So I think this was part of that.
Who's the kid?
I'm not sure who the child is.
So it's not anyone that he knows. He like hired these people.
He's from the UK and the girl is Ukrainian. So I'm not sure how they ended up linking or if the mother was.
Well, she got arrested, right? So clearly she had something to do with it if she was arrested.
But like all the extras at this wedding, was this mother under the interpretation this was like an acting job for her child, or was she trying to traffic the kid?
I don't know, because the news reports that I read, it seems like this whole thing was some kind of a stunt, and even though the guy was a convicted sex offender, it seems as if they're trying to say that the girl wasn't hurt at all. The child wasn't hurt. But I'm just kind of like, well, how do you know that?
Yet?
But how do you even not, how do you know that? Like,
Well, they had to give her a sexual assault exam.
Yeah, but how do you know? I understand that the assault exam could be negative, but how do you know 100% that nothing inappropriate happened? Because children that are 9 years old might not even realize something or might not feel comfortable talking about something that happened to them.
All right, so this guy who was arrested, he was the groom. So he was originally found guilty of sexual activity with 2 15-year-olds in 2016. So then, this is according to BBC reporting. So then in 2023, he hired hundreds of children to act as his fawning fans at a fake film premiere in London. Some of them were as young as 6 years old. Then last summer, he was seen giving gifts to children outside dance auditions for another production. 2 months later, he then filmed himself nude in public. And now we fast forward to this stunt where he's paying $150,000 to have this quote-unquote mock wedding to a child. So one thing the BBC was saying was that they're unsure of how he's getting funding for all of these stunts he's doing, but it's concerning that he's a convicted sex offender and he's doing all these like social media stunts to film and recruit children to be in his presence.
Well, it's clear because he's getting money for making. I mean, that's what I would think, that he's getting lots of views and that's why he's getting money like that. And listen, like there's like a whole entire black market. It might not even be public social media. There's a black market for this weird kind of child pornography or exploitation of children videos like this. So
So
he's probably selling the videos on the dark web or something like
no,
that.
he was putting them on YouTube, and his page had 12 million subscribers and millions of views.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's really cool. Especially
exactly.
the way that YouTube especially censors the shit out of so many people. That's really interesting that they didn't, because it's not straight out porn. That's why. It's because whatever he's doing out in the open with it looking more innocent than it is, probably.
Yeah, and they're saying that a video he took on it that he uploaded on a different channel included secretly filmed footage of one of the 15-year-old victims that he was convicted of exploiting. So this guy has clearly been doing this for years. This goes to my general question all the time. Why are these people walking amongst us? Clearly he's up to no good doing this. I guess technically he's not doing anything illegal, but it's not for good.
No, it's not. And I guess I'm just curious why the mom got arrested now.
Well, do you think
Because
they
if
arrested everybody because they thought it was a real, like, I truly could see, I don't know, I'm saying I could see a scenario in which, because all these other extras were hired, that maybe she thought it was some weird acting job or something for the kid and didn't realize till she showed up what was going on. I also wouldn't be, obviously, he couldn't legally marry her, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was trying to.
Well, not I don't really know what the laws are in Paris. I would say probably not. But in some countries that happens.
Yes.
So I don't know. I don't know anything about this. I just think I can't even believe what it would be like to be an employee there and just have to even experience this. So many of them were probably horrified and shocked and just couldn't even believe what their eyes were seeing, and I can't imagine what the employees were going through behind the scenes there. And this kid too is just,
So
he should get in trouble even if they weren't doing anything, because it's like, why are you using a child for that? It's just gross.
he's 39 years old, and the older man that was arrested that was hired to play her father said he didn't know what was going on until he showed up there and then saw her, basically. So the only two people that remained in custody were the 39-year-old pedophile and the woman that said she was hired to play the bride's sister. But I'm like, were they working together to do something weird? This is a very unusual story. And where is he getting all this money?
But why would he think, did he actually think that he was going to be able to pull off this stunt and to film it?
Yeah, probably.
Why would you think that anybody would just be like, okay, yeah, you're just
Because
gonna
they're
marry.
trying to be like, we're making a viral TikTok video. It's not real. But like, then when you start looking into his history and see he's a pedophile and he's doing all of these other public events recruiting children, you're like, well, you were clearly up to no good, even if you technically weren't doing anything illegal.
Yeah, I don't think I don't know in what world that he would have thought that anybody would have just sat back at any venue and been okay watching a grown man marry a child.
It's
Like,
very
it's just, that's why to me I'm just like, you're putting out all this money to do this stunt. I just don't know in what world he thought the stunt would have got pulled off.
So they were able to charge him with fraud, breach of trust, money laundering, and identity theft. I don't know if they could charge him for the wedding because nothing technically occurred, but at least they got him on something, so they're holding
Did you
him.
mention that he was wearing a disguise?
Oh, no, I totally forgot that. So initially it was reported that he was 22 years old, and then it came out that he had a disguise on his face to make his appearance different.
Yeah, so he was giving another ID of someone else that was younger because he had someone do his makeup so he looked younger.
The whole
So
story
weird.
is so bizarre, and it just
still
makes
don't-
me fear.
Yeah, it makes me fear. I just don't really understand. I don't really understand what the point was. I mean,
The point was
And
that
does
he's a
Disney still get their
pedophile.
money since the wedding didn't go on? Was somebody videoing this up into the point where they called the police, and could they use that footage for a YouTube video?
The point of it was he was recruiting children to make a weird viral video for other pedophiles to view on his YouTube channel.
Well, that's why I'm curious if they took footage up until that point and if they're legally allowed to use that footage, because obviously if they upload that at some point, then people are going to want to see it now, especially because this story's been all over the world on the news, and now everybody wants to see what was happening, right? So
Well,
he would get views.
The police should not release the footage. Also, her mother's still not under arrest, so I don't think she did anything wrong, because wouldn't she be charged if they
Well,
could prove?
I who knows in this day and age, like what's happening.
I guess if his YouTube had 12 million subscribers, then that's how he was getting the money, because that's a lot.
Exactly. That is a lot. That's what I'm saying. Like he was getting it through something. So
All right, well, let's talk about this cruise story, another disturbing one beyond the poop cruise. So Netflix has another documentary coming out in a couple weeks about this woman, Amy Bradley, who disappeared on a royal cruise in 1998. We were just on a royal cruise. When Amy was 23,
that did not feel like royalty. It was like kind of trashy.
it definitely didn't feel like royalty. Had a great time, Mom. Don't get mad at us. Okay, so when Amy was 23, she was on a 7-day cruise with her family. They left on March 21st. Their cruise was departing from Puerto Rico. 2 days later, it was set to arrive in Caraco and then go on to other destinations. So a couple days into the trip, the boat is cruising between two ports, and she goes to this disco with her brother, and then the next morning, nobody could find her. They did an extensive search of the ship. Nobody saw where she was. Somebody said they might have seen her go to the top deck. Another person said they might have seen her with an unidentified crew member, but it was never confirmed that it was her. And then, of course, there was the thought that she fell overboard, but her family is adamant that she is alive.
Well, just being on the cruise and stuff, what do you think? Well, one of the things you should mention too is that when they were arriving, the family begged the cruise not to put down the
gangway.
gate, to let people off until they found her, and the cruise was like, "No, we're not interrupting this trip right now," which from the parents' perspective is like, I keep thinking about the parents' perspective. Imagine being, because when you're on a cruise, you're trapped. No matter, like, you're trapped. And you don't want to get off the boat because she went missing on the boat and get a flight to go somewhere because you want to stay where she was. But at the same time, you're trapped on, you can't stop the vacation for every single other person that's on the cruise because this girl's missing. I don't know what you do in this situation, but just saying, from us getting off at Bermuda and getting back on the ship, they checked our ID 3 times.
Well, they do now. This was 1998.
But you don't think that they did that?
I don't. Well,
I mean, I think that they
have
would
the technology they have now.
Yeah, possibly, but so I guess that could be a consideration, because now I'm just like what we just experienced right now, there's absolutely no way that somebody was getting off of the ship without their ID because of the way that they checked so many times. We had to do ID and the room key for all of us every single time, 3 different stops.
They might have checked your ID to get on and off the ship, but they didn't have a computer system where they were logging every single passenger that got on and off.
In 1998?
It was probably handwritten. And there's a lot of error.
I don't know
back
about that. I don't know if I would say that in 1998. It wasn't that. It was like the 70s or something.
Yeah, but think of the technology they had on the ship, because you need special tech. It's not the same that's like on land. So to have advancements in 1998, to have a computer system operating like that on a boat, it doesn't seem possible to me back then.
Well, regardless, I mean, I'm sure that they were checking though, and they didn't see her getting off the boat.
Well, they might not have had cameras back then either on the boat. That's what the documentary is going to go through. Because if they had cameras on the boat, wouldn't they have been...
1998 was like there was definitely lots of... There wasn't really like strong internet presence, but they definitely had It's not like the 60s where you could just,
It
like, get
listen,
away with shit,
I
like
it existed, but if they had CCTV on the ship, why don't they know where she is?
No, I don't mean CCTV, I'm just saying, like, the people that were letting the people off of the boat knew that there was a girl missing, and they were checking people's IDs as they were getting off.
I think the people getting off is less of a concern as to her getting off the boat and maybe somebody that did something to her on the boat, in my opinion. But when we were just on the boat, I've been very critical in the past about how do people fall overboard on these cruise ships, but I could see it happening now because on some of the decks the railings are pretty low that if you really lost your balance and you're like a taller person, you could certainly go over
Oh,
very
yeah.
quickly.
Gabe and I went to look at the sunset, not last night, the night before that, and it was the whole entire rim of the top of the ship, the point of the ship was it wasn't even like that glass wall. It just was bars that a child could easily go through, a person could easily climb over, a person could be drunk and fall over. I thought the same exact thing as you, honestly. Like, I was like, there was multiple points. You know how you kept telling me not to lean against that one area because it was a gate that opened at some point?
Well, I didn't even think about that, but one night Louie and Ricky were playing shuffleboard on the deck and I went to look over and Ricky was like, "Please move, that's the door, not the railing." And obviously it swung backwards onto the boat, but you never know. Like if you lose your
Yeah.
balance, if the ship is rough sea, you don't know. Like I now that I've been on there could see easily how people do fall overboard. But I'm interested what this documentary is going to reveal about why they think that's not a possibility in this case. Because the FBI is also kind of agreeing with the family that she might be alive.
Yeah, I want to see it too because my first thought is just like she either jumped or fell overboard. Because if they did check the whole ship, then I mean, I just think in a situation like we just had that it it would be very impossible for something like that to happen because they even Gabe and I were saying this, like, let's say we were single and you're on the cruise and you go to Bermuda and you go on the island and you like meet someone and you want to bring them back to your room, like you can't do that.
No, you
There
can't do
it's
that.
it I mean, I'm sure there's ways to maybe, I don't know, but like it's kind of impossible to get people on the boat just because of the security to get onto the boat. You can't just like have a one night stand with someone that's not on the ship with you. So, because it's not like bringing them back to a regular hotel room, you know? Um, but like you said, if they didn't have the proper, I mean, maybe they check like that now because of cases like this, especially because we were on the same cruise liner, right? Um, but, but like back in the day, did they just like go to port and just like let people come and go as they pleased? Like that could have been.
Yeah, I really believe that's a possibility.
But, like, just at the cruise that we just went on, like, there's only one spot where they let people off, so if I would think that if that happened on the one we were just at, all the employees there would know that there was a missing person to be looking for them exiting, but
Well, they were
what do
looking
you
for some
say? You
They were
know,
looking
like
for somebody on the ship because there was police on the boat with a picture of a woman looking around. So I was like, did she commit a crime or did she fall overboard and they're trying to see if she's somewhere?
what, for us?
Yeah, I told you that the other night.
That there were cops on the boat?
There are security and police on the boat, but a couple times I saw them walking around holding a picture of a woman and they were like looking in all the rooms.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Where was I?
I had a whole conversation with you about it at
No,
dinner.
you definitely didn't because I wasn't listening.
You were tuned out being so in love with cruising that you can't wait to go on your next one. I'm interested to see what this has to say because I think if we did have a tracking system like we had coming on and off the ship and they had a lot of security, then obviously there wouldn't be as many questions. In my true crime mind, is it possible that a crew member did something to her and knew where to like store her body or get rid of her or something? That's interesting to think about.
When you're on this cruise, because obviously I don't do the drink package, do they monitor how much you're drinking?
No.
Yeah,
I mean, they
like I'm
scan your
just
card,
saying,
but are they gonna cut you
I
off?
can't even believe that there's not more things that happen with all of the drinking that's going on. I just can't. Like especially like falling over the I don't know, it's just kind of nuts to me.
This is something I couldn't believe about the Poop Cruise documentary because they said at some point when the ship was down, they decided to do an open bar and give everybody drinks. So I'm like, okay, so you don't have working bathrooms at all. You're telling people to piss in the shower or over the edge of the boat. And then you're going to give everybody diuretics or things that are going to make them vomit. It didn't make
Well,
any sense at
no,
all.
it makes sense because they were trying to keep people happy so they didn't get as many lawsuits when they got back maybe.
Oh, to answer a question about that, apparently, so this maritime lawyer was like all over this as the news coverage was breaking. And apparently, they did settle some lawsuits and they did give everybody a refund and then like a $500 voucher and a free cruise. Like, thanks. I was just stranded for 4 days. But apparently, in the disclosure of their ticket, they agreed that the cruise ship was not responsible for like anything happening. The way they had it worded was so insane.
Well, I could see because you can't prevent something like a fire or something, but I think that when they found that the cruise had 6 generators and only 4 of them were working, like negligence, things like that, then that's when you would be able to sue because they didn't have all of the proper things to prevent a catastrophe like that from happening.
If I'm remembering correctly, it was worded in a way that was basically like, we don't have to guarantee that the boat is safe. It was the lawyer was like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever read.
Yeah, but I mean, this is what happens when you sign this shit. Like, who the hell knows?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm gonna be watching this. I'm interested to see what they have to say. I think the most obvious explanation is she possibly fell overboard, especially if she had been drinking or something. But I mean, if the family and the FBI are thinking there's a possibility she's alive, I'm curious to see what evidence they have to support that.
All right, let's get into this interesting case about this kidney transplant.
So, 2 months after getting a kidney transplant, the 61-year-old man was rushed to the hospital in distress. So, initially, I would have thought that maybe his body was rejecting the organ or something, but that's not what they found.
No, so typically when a person gets an organ transplant, the most common things that you're concerned about are an infection right afterwards, just from the surgical procedure itself. And then, of course, rejection that could happen soon after, or even months or years after the organ is transplanted. So, because of rejection, your body doesn't recognize a foreign object. So, even if you put in breast implants or any foreign object into the body, your body normally, your immune system is like, this isn't supposed to be here and attacks it. So when you get a transplant, you get put on certain medications that cause your organ not to be attacked by your immune system. So it suppresses or makes your immune system not work great. And when you're on drugs like that, then you're at an increased risk of getting other kinds of infections because your body doesn't recognize them easily as foreign and attack them like they normally would because you're on these drugs that are making your immune system chill out. So they didn't really know what was going on with him because when he presented, as Maria was saying, like she said, oh, I would have thought he was rejecting the organ, but he wasn't presenting with the typical symptoms that you would see in a person that was rejecting an organ. So they did a bunch of blood work and all of these tests, and they found something that was very unusual, which was that he had a lot of eosinophils in his blood. And eosinophils are red blood cells, and they're called eosinophils because eosin is a red color, and it just means that they love red. That's what eosinophil means. And under the microscope, if you got blood work or I got blood work, most people get blood work, you'll see a few of these cells scattered throughout the blood, but there's not really that many of them. Whenever you see a patient that has high eosinophils, you automatically think that they're having either a really bad allergic reaction to something or that they have a parasite. That's a common thing that you see there as well. So they were just thinking about any kind of weird thing that this patient could have got because they were on these drugs that were chilling out their immune system so they wouldn't reject the organ. And they couldn't really come up with anything because They also give you medication so you don't get these infections. They really try to keep you like drugged up so your body handles this transplant. And he also had this really weird rash. So when they worked him up and everything, they finally figured out that he had a parasitic worm infection called strongyloides. So what was really interesting is that because this isn't common to get in America, they had tested the blood from the donor. They called the donor organization and were like, "Hey, did this guy have strongyloides infection that gave that the kidney came from?" And they had said no, but then they tested his blood and they found out that he had antibodies against that organism, that parasite. So, whenever you get an infection, we could even talk about this with something like COVID or anything like that. When your body sees something as a new infection, it creates something called antibodies. So, next time you're exposed to it, your immune system will recognize these antibodies and know that your body has seen it before. So, the donor of this kidney had these antibodies, which means that that person had a strongyloides infection at some point. They tested the person that was the recipient of the kidney and found out that he did not have these antibodies for strongyloides, which means only one thing, that he got strongyloides parasite from the kidney donation. That's how they figured out that that was the case. Then they looked into it, and the guy, he was from the Caribbean and he had it, and that's what happened. And he also had been a donor of 2 kidneys. So another patient got his other kidney, and that patient also got sick with strongyloides, a parasitic infection as well. It's really, really crazy and rare that this happened. And luckily, both of these people survived, because normally if a person got that infection, it wouldn't be that bad. But in this case, it traveled to this guy's lungs. It could travel to the brain. They're worms, by the way. It's really disturbing. And when they biopsied this weird rash this guy had on his skin, it ended up being in his skin as well. So
Ew.
yeah, it's really, really gross and disturbing. And to think that you can get like all of the things, because sometimes there's been cases of people getting cancer from organs that were donated, but a parasite is just so nasty. And they were able to treat both of the people that got both of this guy's kidneys, and they lived. But now they are suggesting that people are getting screened from this, especially when they're from high risk regions like the Caribbean, where the strongyloides parasite is more common.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely need to be checking because this would have been preventable. So if they checked beforehand, he wouldn't have been an eligible donor.
No. No, I mean, if a person has an active infection, like something like this, especially, and like think about, especially when they're giving patients drugs to make their immune system not work as great, and really their main goal is that they just want to make sure that not only does the patient not reject the organ, but they also don't get a weird infection, because that's just going to halt their healing from the transplant. And ultimately, they want you to get the transplant, not reject it, and heal so you could go on to have a normal life. And they don't want to introduce things like cancer, obviously, or weird parasitic infections. It's just something that you don't even think of, and it's kind of rare that it happened, but
All right,
it's bizarre.
let's get into our last story. A boil advisory has been issued for multiple areas in Ohio after the body of a dead worker was found inside a water tank.
It is so gross.
All right, it is gross, but like one of our best friends works in a lot of water towers, and it's not uncommon that like dead animals are found in them.
It's not.
No.
I'd want to know about that. Well, so listen, so this guy was working the night shift, and he was working the night before, which was 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I guess whoever showed up to take over after him couldn't find him. And then an hour later, they found him floating face down in the water tank, but he still had on his harness and he had safety straps and everything attached. So as far as how the guy ended up in the water, I don't know if the safety harness or the straps failed or if he had a heart attack and fell in or whatever happened. I'm assuming that those straps are supposed to be preventing a person from falling in the water accidentally. So he fell in, and so we don't know when this guy died, right? Because he was working from 7 p.m. the night before. So we haven't heard any more information about his cause of death or how decomposed he was. So he could have been in there up to 12 hours prior to his body getting found.
This doesn't sound right that you would be working a shift like this alone.
I don't know how it works, but I don't see this happens sometimes though, that you have, like, we had a situation once in the hospital when we were working that one of the cleaning people that came in on the weekend was stuck in the elevator for like 2 days because she was by herself, didn't have her phone on her, nobody knew she was in this back service elevator. Like, it just happens sometimes where people are by themselves like that, and I don't know if that's protocol or whatever, but I don't know what happened. The whole point is though, is that this guy could have been in the water anywhere from like 1 hour to 12 hours. When you die, you start to decompose right away. And when bacteria in your GI tract starts multiplying, it starts putting off gas, which creates bloating. And that's what causes people, like this guy was face down floating in the water. That's what would cause that. And this bacteria releases gas, and the gas smells terrible. It smells so bad if you've ever smelled anything decomposing. And to think about the smell of that gas and the fluids leaking from the body inside of water, which I looked it up, and their average temperature, thank God they weren't going through a heat wave like we were here last week when it was like 103 degrees or whatever. But their high temperature was 80 something degrees, which is hot when you're thinking about water being in a water tower. I mean, now, and it's been like that for weeks in this part of Ohio. Like when I turn on my hose right now, the water comes out of it and it's hot. Like temperature, it's like if you would put hot water in your house. So the water could be a higher temperature too, which would just accelerate the decomposition of this guy in the water, and that decomposition fluid and the breakdowns of the body being in the water. And so they're advising the people that live in the town to boil their water.
That's so
It's
disgusting.
so nasty, right? Like, think about that decomp juice being in water and people being like, and listen, like when you boil it, you kill all of the germs and it's clean to drink, because all water, if it's not either treated in a facility or it's boiled, it has lots of organisms in it. But just the thought of it is just, it's just gross, right?
Yeah, of course it's disgusting. You don't want to think about the water that you're using for drinking water and in your shower and everything has a decomp juice in it.
So do you know what this, as soon as I heard about this, it reminded me, remember so back in 2021, I wrote a high profile death dissection about this Netflix documentary that was released called Crime Scene, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel. Do you remember
yeah.
that? Her name was Eliza Lamb.
Yeah.
She was a 21-year-old college student that was reported missing in this hotel and later found decomposing in one of the hotel's rooftop water tanks for 2 weeks later, right? So all these people at the hotel prior to her body being found were saying that their water was discolored and it tasted gross when they were brushing their teeth and stuff.
That is so
like,
gross.
I know. Could you imagine that? And all that was like decomp juice mixed with the drinking water and the water that was coming out of their shower and stuff. It's just so disgusting.
I would say this is definitely not the first time a person has died in a water tank, especially
no,
if
it's just so disturbing to think every single time that you're turning on your water, like you have to take it out and boil it because there was a dead body in it. I mean, no thanks. I would just be off of it for a couple weeks at that point.
Yeah, I'd say. All right, guys. Well, it's been fun this week. So we have the Atlanta meet and greet and the Crime and Wine happening just in 2 weeks. So the Atlanta meet and greet's on July 11th. Crime and Wine at the Georgia Writers Museum is on the 12th. There are 2 sessions for that date, so please make sure to pick a good time for one of the sessions. If you want to head over to Apple or Spotify and leave us a review, that would be awesome, or to our YouTube channel and subscribe. And if you have a story for us, please submit it to stories@motherknowsdeath.com.
Have a good weekend, guys. Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day, and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.